Hey guys, it's Jessie with Don't Burn the Cookies podcast. I'm here today with our first tea time episode. So this episode I'll be talking about two different things that happened during my second deployment when I was in the Air Force. So it's going to be some real good juicy stuff. As a disclaimer, I went ahead and changed all the names of the people involved in this story since I really don't know where they are today or how this could end up affecting them. And honestly, I don't really want the heat, but I do want to share the juice. Um, so that is what we're going to be doing today. All right, so before we get into the topics, I just wanted to shout out my first two roommates when I was deployed on my first deployment. Melissa and Carolyn, you two girls were absolute angels compared to the roommate that I will be discussing in today's tea time stories. Like, you guys really set the bar so fucking high that this bitch she can't even like reach it even if she tried. So I just want to thank you two lovely ladies for doing that and being just a normal fucking person. Like, thank you. Thank you so much for that. In addition to that, since these stories do cover infidelity, I do want to give my condolences to the victim involved with all this. In this story, there is a wife who, in my opinion, has been slighted in the worst way possible. And I don't know her name. And of course, I'm not going to share the name even if I did. But I just want to let that wife know, if she's listening or if she happens upon this audio one day, that my heart goes out to you. And I really hope that you're in a better place and that you're with someone that respects you and really cherishes you more than that man ever did. All right. So for our first story, it's about my roommate, Haley. And keep in mind, I went ahead and changed all the names for these people. So obviously Haley is not her real name, just to protect their privacy. So the first one is about Haley, my roommate, and how much of a cunt she was. She had so many red flags that just kept popping off throughout the whole deployment. And we were there together like roommates for 3 months, and like these red flags, they just kept popping up one after another. The first big one was that she couldn't stand the fact that I did this terrible thing, which was locking our bedroom door when no one was in our bedroom. And it's just like, it's common sense. Do you not lock your doors at home? Do you not, like, what do you mean? Why are you, I couldn't understand why she would be so angry that I will lock our bedroom door. And it's just basic security. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because she was from Hawaii and maybe things are different down there where you could just leave your shit unlocked left and right. But like, honey, I'm not from there and I'm going to lock my shit up. Like, at the end of the day, like, I have my wallet in there. Well, yeah, I have my wallet in there. I have my laptop. I have my cell phone. And yeah, theft isn't really like a big problem per se on like these overseas deployment bases. But why give the opportunity by not locking your room, you know? In addition to that, whenever like her and the group of other ground folks would go off base for their trips, she was supposed to let me know because I was night shift, and she was supposed to let me know when they were all going so then I could get up, get ready to go, and go with them. She never would do it. She would never wake me up. She would never tell me nothing. She would just sneak into the room all quiet like, get dressed, and then sneak out. And then when the other people that were going off base would come knock on my door looking for us, they'd be like, Jess, why aren't you dressed? And I'm like, why would I be dressed? It's the middle of my sleep schedule. What do you mean? And they'd be like, oh, we told your roommate to wake you up so that we could go off base together. And I'm like, well, I don't know where my roommate is. Oh, there she is. She's getting her shoes on and she's coming to meet y'all. And in those cases, it was like one of those situations where I elected not to go because I didn't want to be around her, because that just showed me how much of a nasty bitch she was. And a nasty bitch for no reason, by the way. But also, too, I didn't want to hold up everyone else because I would have to go to the on-base like little bank where you could exchange your like American currency for the foreign currency. And you didn't necessarily have to do that before you left to go off base, but it was highly recommended because it just made it so much easier to do any transactions when you went off base, whether you were going to the bazaars or restaurants or to this one resort that had full access to a beach. It was just easier if you just had the cash on hand versus risking the security of swiping a card anywhere. She also, at one point during our deployment, she lost her key and then made it my fucking problem. And so the policy when you are deployed, when you lose your key, you have to go to lodging. And depending on the deployment location, you either have to pay for one or you'll be issued a new one. Either way, you got to go get a new key, right? Makes sense. Instead of her going and getting a new key because she lost her fucking key, she would just hunt me down on base, try to find where I was, and demand me to like give over my keys so that she could get into our room. And it's just like, are you fucking kidding? Just go to lodging. And she did this for, I want to say she did this for like a month straight. A full month that she could have been going to lodging and getting a new key. She just elected not to. She just chose not to. And that, and like, I don't know why this woman had so much beef with me, because she would never talk to me about it, and she would also just have so many just microaggressions. And I did talk to a captain about it in our office, and I told her, can you please talk to my roommate, tell her to stop her bullshit, because if she doesn't stop, it's gonna get fucking violent real quick. And I'm not like a violent person, but for you to bring that out of me, there's something wrong with you, legitimately. And of course, the captain did nothing. They didn't think it was really that big of a deal. But if they're listening to this audio right now, then they're going to see how much of a big deal it is, because this roommate ended up damaging government property just to spite me. For instance, she shoved a fork into the locking mechanism of our door so that if it was locked, you couldn't get a key in there to unlock it. And I had to put in a work order to get that shit fixed. Like, and I don't even understand why this woman is so psycho, because I was always nice to her, because I understand we're going to be in the desert together for 3 months. And when you have a roommate, it's best to be cordial to some extent. You don't have to be friends, don't get me wrong, but you also don't have to be enemies. And like, this woman, she just hated me with a passion, and I don't know why. Like, I would invite her to go out to the movies, and whenever I was going off base with other people that she didn't know about, I would invite her, like, so that she had an opportunity to go as well. Even going over to like the mall and stuff, like, I showed her around base, because this wasn't my first time at this base, and so I showed her around where everything was, like, and she was just a full-on cunt for like 3 months. Don't know why. Let's see. Another thing that she did was so at one point we actually moved to these transitional dorms. And so that's when your deployment is almost up, like a couple weeks beforehand, they'll move you over to these transitional dorms so that the new crews that are coming in could then take your nicer, good dorms. She decided, before I could even get off work, that she was going to completely rearrange that room so that I would sleep on this ridiculous, like, unstable, wonky ass bed. And so, basically, with these rooms, they have these bunk beds that have been taken apart and put together so many times over the years that they're missing parts. And so that's what she did. She took bunk bed pieces for a headboard and a footboard, but didn't have the framing to connect those pieces in the middle. She put those down and then put the bed frame, my bed frame, on top of that. So then when you got on top of the bed, it swayed back and forth like as if you were on a ship. So I then had to, of course, take all that shit down myself and be like, no, we're not doing that. In addition to that, for some reason, her and that same captain that I asked for help with dealing with this bitch decided it was appropriate to put the captain's belongings under my bed while I was sleeping. Like, really? First of all, Why? Because not for nothing, I don't want someone else's stuff in this room because God forbid something happens to it. It's going to fall on us. Why does this officer think it's okay to store their belongings in our room? We were airmen. We were senior airmen. And this was a captain, mind you. Like, what the fuck? And when I talked to the captain, she was like, well, I don't have room in my room. And I'm like, none of us have room in our room. These rooms are very small and they're transitional dorms. They have enough room for one twin size bed. Like when you open the doors in the center, they have room for one twin size bed on the left side up against the wall, one twin size bed on the right side up against the wall, and then a small wall locker at the end of each bed. That is all the room that they have room for. And then you have a small walkway down the center that goes to the window that's in the center of the room that is about the same size as a twin bed. So it can only fit three twin beds side by side in that room. None of us have room for all our stuff. That is a you problem. I'm sorry. Like, that is a you problem. I'm sorry that you don't have room in your, like, room for the stuff, but we don't have room in our room for our stuff either. You need to suck it up because this is a deployment. This isn't a fucking vacation, right? Let's see. And then before I get to the real juicy part about this roommate, Haley, this was the last straw, and I didn't really, at this point, I was so done with dealing with her shit that I didn't care. I came home from a shift one day. I was on night shift, and I came home probably around 8 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning, to find her wrapped in nothing but a towel, passed out on the floor, with a plastic trash bag beside her head. She was drunk as shit. And at this point, dealing with a lot of her issues, like leading up to this, I no longer gave a shit about her. I was done. I was done being nice. I was done being convenient. I was done even thinking about her in the slightest. And not for nothing, if she wasn't such a bitch, me, when I walked into this room and found her passed out drunk, wearing nothing but a towel, I would have done something. 100%. I would have picked her up and like, hey, go here, go get in your bed. Do you need me to go to the DFAC, get you some scrambled eggs, get you something to eat? I would have done that. But because I was dealing with her being such a fucking bitch for 3 months straight with no help at all, that I was like, you know what? This is not my circus. This is not my monkeys. I am not dealing with this. And like I said, there was no room in those rooms for me to access my stuff because now she's laying in the last little bit of space in the room. So what I did was I ended up climbing onto my bed, still fully in uniform with my boots and everything. And I was cringing because I was like, I don't want to get my boots on the bed, but I also just don't want to deal with her. So it was worth getting my boots on the bed and having to wash my linens. But I crawled onto my bed and grabbed my shower caddy, grabbed my towel, grabbed everything I needed. And then I walked out of the room and I went and took a shower. Because I was just so done with her. I was done. And then her friend had the audacity to tell me that I should have done something. I should have helped her. I should have done this. I should have done that. Well, here's the thing. The night before, while I was on night shift, she went out drinking with a lot of people. And at this space, you are only allowed to have 3 drinks every 18 hours. The way they track it is by scanning your cat card. And basically, if you go up there and you scan your cat card and you're trying to get like a 4th drink, they'll tell you no. So you're cut off. You can't get any more. That night, she went out drinking with a lot of people, and a lot of people didn't want their drinks or just were giving it to her for some reason. I don't know why. But she ended up drinking more than her 3 drinks that were allowed, and then she was also drinking other people's drinks on top of that. So it's just like, you're already doing something that you're not supposed to do, first of all. Second of all, your friends also made sure you got back to your room and dropped you off here in the middle of the night. Why didn't your friends take care of you? Why did your friends just let you lay on the floor in a towel? Like, what the fuck? And so when Haley's friend was like, you should have done something, I'm like, well, what did you do? You went out drinking with her last night, did you not? And she did. Why didn't you take care of Haley? Why do I have to come off my shift, my night shift no less, and take care of her immediately? Why didn't you guys take care of her last night when you guys went out drinking with her? And she tried to like justify it like, oh no, but still you should have done something. No, 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 no. She has been a bitch to me for 3 months. I ain't doing shit for her. And not only that, she went out drinking with you guys. You guys should have taken care of her. Y'all shouldn't have left her like that. One of y'all should have been in that room with her until I got home, in the very least, to make sure she was okay. But y'all didn't. You ditched her in the middle of the night. Alright, so now we're getting to the juicy part. So the thing about Haley was, during this deployment, I do believe that she was sleeping with a married man who we'll call Chad. So, some background. In the beginning of this deployment, I did have some interactions with Chad, getting to know the ground team. He was part of the ground team. And so I got to know him, and I got to know a lot of the other people while we were there. And I formed a really good bond with this ground team, because one thing that we would always do in between, during our shifts, I would come over, just go say hi to them, hang out with them for like a couple minutes whenever I needed a brain break. We would play Jenga. And it got to the point that we were so competitive about playing Jenga that it wasn't even fucking funny. Like, I'm not kidding you. Like, we gotten so good that we were joking around saying how when we get back to Offutt Air Force Base, where we were home stationed out of, we were joking around saying how we were going to start a Jenga league because we got so good at playing Jenga. And so we would go over there, play Jenga, we would bond. So I had a pretty good rapport with all the ground crew in there, and I knew Chad pretty well because of that. One thing I learned about Chad during this time in the beginning of the deployment was he was just newly married, and according to him, he was so in love with his wife, which, good for him. I was like, good for you. Like, oh my God, like, it's good to, like, it's young love. There's nothing like young love, especially like young newlywed love. And I'm like, good for you. And, we would talk, and it was nice. He was actually pretty cool then. He wasn't a fucking douchebag that he turned out to be. And so I do believe Haley and Chad were sleeping together, not only because of things I was told by the other ground crew members. The other ground crew people in that office also told me they were sleeping together, that they had to have been, because of many different things that were just suspicious. How they're always hanging out with each other, for example. And for me, yes, always hanging out doesn't actually mean anything. I always hang out with a lot of people, but I've never had sex with them. So for me, I was like, that's not really like a red flag. That's not really proof that they're sleeping together. Like, they could just be hanging out. But they end up finding more and more evidence down the road as the months come that was just too compelling to like ignore. In addition to that, our job as a ground crew was to support the air crew. And nothing against the air crew or anything like that, but the thing with air crew members, if you're not an air crew member, the way they treat you is as if you're very insignificant. So they don't even have the time to really learn your name. Like, they just don't care. Like, the apathy is very high when it comes to them dealing with you as a ground crew member. So the fact that ground crew people started talking about Chad and Haley sleeping together was what really set it off for me. Because air crew members, they're so like absorbed in their own world that they don't notice us, even though we're there like directly supporting them and helping them on a daily basis. So the fact that they picked up that these two were sleeping together was fucking huge. And that's one thing I told all the other ground crew people. I was like, if air crew knows, then it must be legit, because air crew, they don't really even act like they know us. Even when we're off base and not working on mission stuff, like, they still act like they don't even know us, because their heads are so far up their asses and in their own fucking world that to acknowledge us is like unheard of. So the fact that aircrew knew something was up between Chad and Haley was my big red flag that they were sleeping together. Some things about Chad. So, me and one of my coworkers, we theorized how it could be possible that Chad was cheating. And that has a lot to do with Chad suddenly taking testosterone supplements that you could get at the BX to improve his workout. Now, my coworker, we'll call him, I just realized in my list of names that I changed and translated, I didn't do one for my coworker. So let me find one right now. We're going to call him, we're going to call him Sam. Okay. So, my coworker Sam, that I worked with more closely together on a lot of different things for the aircrew, he was Chad's roommate, and he was able to tell me some things that also kind of insinuated that Chad was sleeping with Haley. But he also was able to fill me in on information that only a roommate can know. So he's the one, Sam told me that Chad was taking these testosterone supplements. And here's the thing about Sam. Sam, if like the best way I could describe him is Captain America. He like literally looks like Captain America, like the fit, the hair, the bod, everything. Looks like fucking Captain America. And he really does care a lot about working out and bodybuilding in general. So, out of anyone in this whole unit, if there's anyone's opinion I trust when it comes to supplements, it's going to be Sam's. I'm going to trust Sam. And Sam was like, he doesn't even need to take testosterone because we're young. He's like 21 years old, 22 years old. Like, he doesn't need testosterone because we already produce like way too much of it as it is as young men. So I don't know why he's taking it. And so part of me was like, well, maybe that's why he's cheating, because he's just so fucking like testosterone built up that he just has to fucking cheat or something. I don't know, because when I first got here at this deployment, he was talking about how much he was in love with his wife, and by the end of the deployment, he was talking about how he was going to get divorced. Crazy, huh? There was also one point where I got switched throughout the deployment. I do get switched back and forth between day crew and night crew, and so this was one of the moments where I got temporarily switched to day crew for like maybe a couple days at a time. And so I got to meet up with my ground crew, like peeps that, you know, I was telling you guys about earlier, that we play Jenga competitively. So it's been like probably a month and a half, I don't know, a month, like 2 months. And I'm like, yes, I'm back with my boys. Like, we could play our Jenga and have a good time during work. And while I was over there for one of my, you know, little 10-minute brain breaks, you know, playing Jenga with them, I casually mentioned something about Haley and Chad and how I was kind of getting sick and tired of them. And I said something probably along the lines of, I am so sick and tired of Chad and his little girlfriend. Simple like that. And we had a new guy that just came in to the unit to join the ground crew. We're going to call him Nate. He did not stand for that, which honestly, Nate, bravo, brava. Like, the look on Nate's face when I said that, and he put two and two together in his head, you could see the wheels turning, that Chad has a wife. Why does he have a little girlfriend? And he was like, wait, Chad is cheating on his wife? And I was like, that's what everyone seems to think. For me, here's my thing. I'm not going to lie about shit. If I'm asked, hey, what's going on with XYZ, I'm going to tell you what I know. Whether it's factual or not, this is what I know or what I brought in. I'm not going to lie. And I'm not going to cover someone's ass. Because at the end of the day, when this pendulum swings, it ain't swinging on me, bitch. It ain't swinging on me. And so I was like, yeah, that's what everyone seems to think. Like, everyone's talking about it, even aircrew. And he was like, are you serious? And that's when all the other ground crew people, Chad was not here in this office when this happened, mind you, but all the other ground crew people immediately covered for Chad. They're like, oh, no, they just hang out a lot. No, it's just a joke, like, blah, blah, blah. Mind you, all these ground crew people are the ones that told me that Chad and Haley were fucking. And so I'm just like, whatever. I was not going to cover for him. I was just like, whatever. This is just what I've been told. This is just what I've heard. I'm not going to lie, because especially when it comes to the military with these kind of things, if an investigation was started, bitch, I'm not going to lie for nobody. I'm not going to put my career on the line, my security clearance on the line for this fucking bullshit, for cheating. Because honestly, so for anyone who doesn't know, in the military, It's actually like considered a crime to cheat on your spouse. It's considered like infidelity is considered a crime, and you can be like taken care of through whatever judicial action through the military branch that you are a part of. And so that's why I say I'm not going to put my career and I'm not going to put my security clearance on the line because someone else is cheating. No. Especially because in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, things like cheating is not the business of your it is not the military's business in my opinion. That is something that needs to be handled in the home and with your lawyers and not with your like supervisor essentially or your commander. Like that's fucking stupid. But that's neither here nor there. So that's why I say I'm not putting my career on the line because you guys want to cheat. And I didn't join in with these men that were covering for him. I was just like, okay, whatever. It is whatever. I guess they wanted to put their careers on the line. It's just insanity to me. But how does this tie into our second story? So our second story is about Oh, before we actually get into our second story, this is the last point I've noticed on my list of notes. So, after Haley left, me and Chad, I got put back on day shift again temporarily, and Chad was driving me back to the dorms after work one day. It was just me and Chad actually admitted to me that they had a thing together, which I thought was wild because I was like, do not tell me this shit because the less I know, the better. Because like I said, if someone asks me, I'm going to fucking say it. I'm going to say it. So Chad actually admitted to me that they had been sleeping together after Haley had already left the base. And he also told me a lot of other things about Haley, like how she shoved fork into the key mechanism, the locking mechanism in the door, and broke it off. So then it would make the lock just non-functional at all. He also told me that. And I was like, don't tell me this because I'm going to snitch if someone asks me to snitch. I'm not going to cover your ass. But I think that's the thing with Chad. He just can't keep his like mouth to himself. And that's probably why like a lot of the other ground crew people who work directly with him in the same exact office, kind of caught wind and, knew of these allegations of him cheating on his wife, before anyone else did. Because the thing about Chad, he can't keep his mouth shut. He can't keep shit to himself. Literally the day after Haley left, he told me this. He couldn't wait to tell me this. He was so excited, like a little kid, and he was like grinning ear to ear to tell me this. And I'm just like, this guy, there's something wrong with him. Like, he ain't right. He just wants people to know. And I don't know why. But I also have reason to believe during the deployment, he potentially was sleeping with some other people. And we'll get into that reason with my second story about my deployment bestie, who we're going to call Janet. There was one weird instance I had with her that didn't make sense. It made more plausible sense that she was involved with him as well sexually, because of the circumstances of it. So it doesn't completely surprise me during that car ride that he told me all this stuff. It surprised me at the time, but now looking back on it, I'm like, he can't keep his mouth shut. So yeah, he told me all this in the car ride back that him and Haley did have a little thing together, that Haley broke the door, and also that he was gonna look into getting a divorce or annulment. Reason being, divorce or annulment, they were Catholics, and so I guess with a short amount time period, you could get like an annulment. I don't really know how it works. I'm not Catholic. And so I was like, and I told him that. I was like, I don't know how annulments work because I'm not Catholic. Like, you're going to have to go talk to a professional about that. Not me. I don't give a shit. But he also did some other sleazy things leading up to our final departure from our deployment, Like another time that I got put on day shift when we were walking out of the compound along with some of the other day shift folks. For some reason, I still don't know why to this day, and it really bugs me, and it bugged the fuck out of me at the time. He decided he was going to grab my hand and try to hold my hand as we were walking out. And I immediately like took my hand back, and I'll admit I hit him. I didn't swing at him per se, but I did hit him with like the back of my hand. And I was like, stop, like, what the fuck are you doing? Don't fucking touch me. Don't touch me. Like, why would you do that? That is my biggest thing. I don't like being touched by people. Like, especially strangers, which technically, even though we spent this time together, he was turning out to be more of a stranger than I thought initially. And so I don't like being touched by strangers, especially. And I don't like being touched by people that I don't like. And at this point in the deployment, when this happened, when he tried to grab my hand to like hold it for some weird reason, like, I did not like him. So I'm like, I definitely don't want you touching me. Like, so why would you try to grab my hand and hold it as we're walking out the compound in front of all these people? Don't fucking touch me, man. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. I don't know what's wrong with you. Like, you're setting up a case for all this damning evidence. So when your wife drags your ass to court, I hope she gets everything. And you know what? I really hope you did get that divorce, and I hope she did get everything. Because he was such a fucking sleazebag. Like, Chad was a fucking sleazebag. Don't like him. Alright, let's see. Next part of the story is about my deployment bestie, Janet. Janet, she worked with the ground crew in that same office as Chad did, with all those other guys in there. And she was the only other like female that I really vibed with, that was part of the ground crew, and that we hung out like a lot, like all the time, and we talked a lot. And she was literally like my deployment bestie. But with that said, there was something that happened while we were deployed that gives me reason to believe that Janet is a shady hoe, and she doesn't have really good communication skills at all, like zero communication skills. Before I get into how she doesn't have communication skills, I want to tell you the link between this story and the previous story about Chad, cheating on his wife. So during this deployment, at one point, when me and Janet were hanging out at what is called the Bra, basically what it is at this base, it's these two very large circus tents. It helps provide some shade, and there's also like a stage under there, so that when there's concerts that happen, or back in the day, that's where karaoke used to happen before it started happening at the other bar on base. But it's a nice area where everyone could kind of gather, have their drinks, hang out, smoke some hookah, chill. And they call it the Bra because these two circus stands, together, they do look like Madonna's bra from the 80s. Not gonna lie. So we were hanging out there, and that's when she told me like two different things that happened, as far as messages that she's received, and she asked me for advice of what to do about it. So the first one was she was getting random calls, and when the caller ID popped up, it said Moscow, Russia on it. So with that first one, I was like, bitch, you need to tell our security chief about that, because that's something that you got to report to the security chief. They'll report it to, OSI, so that there's documentation that for some reason someone in Moscow is trying to call people who are deployed. And they kept calling her and calling her, and she was like, I never answer the phone. She's like, but I don't know what to do. And I was like, you need to go to the security chief. Go to the security chief, report it immediately. The second thing, she was like, okay, I'm gonna go do that, and I'll go ahead and report it. Not a big deal. The second thing she wanted my advice on, with another message that she got, was with a Facebook message from Chad's wife. Chad's wife messaged her and then proceeded to block her on Facebook so that she could not reach out to Chad's wife and respond back to it at all. But essentially the message said something along the lines of, Stop hanging out with Chad because every time you hang out with him, he will not talk to me on the phone. I was like, what? And I was like, she was like, what do I do about this? And I was like, I don't know, save it as like documentation. Don't delete it, but like, don't do anything. Like, don't reach back out, and maybe don't hang around Chad no more, because this could end up like ruining your career. Because as I said earlier in this episode, the military takes infidelity very serious. There's swift action done to the person who is cheating, as well as any involved persons that are not in that relationship, that are basically enabling the cheating. I've heard stories about that happening where both people got in trouble for it, both been reprimanded in some way, shape, or form. So I told her, stay away from Chad. Keep this for your records, but don't hang out with Chad anymore, because you could end up losing your career over this. And honestly, Chad isn't worth losing your career over. With that said, at the time, I kind of believed her that she didn't have anything to do with Chad. I did believe her at the time, but now looking back onto it, I'm like, why would a woman that we do not know, that we never met, we just met Chad during this deployment, so we never even knew Chad prior. Why would a woman that we never met, who is married to a man that we just met during a deployment, just randomly send out a basically cold call, but not call, but message, basically just send out a random message to a specific woman in the unit? How does she know that that specific woman is also deployed with us, also works in the same office as us? How does she know this information to then message that woman and make that claim, stop hanging around my husband? How does she know this information? Unless there's truth to it, unless there's something more to it. And so now looking back on this, I'm like, maybe Janet was sleeping with him. Who knows? Janet always made the claim that she can't stand him, that she doesn't want to hang out with him, that he's such a jerk, and this, that, and the next thing. Like, more so than anyone else. So maybe that was her, like, overcompensating to cover her ass, of how much she hates him. I don't know. But at the same time, I think Chad's wife was onto something, because you don't just get this information easily and know specifically who to message in the unit to make these claims and say, stop hanging around my husband. Especially when none of us knew her husband before being put out on this deployment. Not a single one of us knew him. So I think that says a lot. I think that certainly says a lot. All right, moving on to why Janet is a shady hoe that does not have good communication skills. So, as I said, me and Janet, during this deployment, we were besties. We talked about a lot of different things. We talked about her kids. We talked about her relationships, my relationships, our lifestyles, stuff like that. So, we got to know each other really well. After the deployment, our relationship kind of fizzled out. And I think it's because we just realized we are not the same people in, like, America that we are deployed. We're a different kind of person. And it just didn't mesh anymore. It just didn't work out. And no bad blood at all. I still like Janet. She's pretty cool and whatnot. But, we just kind of went our separate ways. It was pretty amicable and just, whatever. We just both fizzled out on our own. Not a big deal. But during this deployment, she was telling me about a man who was a tech sergeant that we'll call Brad. I actually don't know what his name is. All I just know is he's a tech sergeant, and I know what his stupid face looks like. That's it. I don't actually know what his name is. But she told me one day that she met this tech sergeant at the Fox Bar on base, and he seemed pretty cool. But as they got talking more and more, like, I guess they were talking over maybe Facebook or somehow messaging, she started to not like him anymore, and she told me that he made her uncomfortable. And so she asked me one day, she's like, hey, the next time that you go down to the Fox Bar for, to get yourself a drink or something, can I go with you? Because this man makes me feel uncomfortable, just in case he pops up. So for our listeners that are female, You know this is Girl Code 101. Of course, I said, yes, I will go with you. Because Girl Code 101 dictates when a girl needs help to feel comfortable in a space, you back her the fuck up, right? And especially because at this point, I was like, she's my deployment bestie. Of course I'm going to go. So the next time I went, I told her, I was like, hey, I'm going to go. Let's go get some drinks. Let's just talk about, whatever is going on in our life, what we're doing with our workouts, and, shoot the shit like we normally do. She was like, dope, let's do it. So we went to the bar. We were out. We got our drinks, and we decided to sit down underneath the bra instead of staying in the bar so that we could just sit and talk and shoot the shit. And randomly, this man who I've never seen before comes up, doesn't introduce himself or nothing, and decides to sit down at the table with us and just join in the conversation. I don't know this guy, and it's just weird. And I'm like, okay, for me, I am big on manners. So it's just like, if you're going to come up and sit down with these people and talk to them, at least have the decency to be like, hey, my name is Brad. How are y'all doing today? And then join in the conversation. Even though that's still a little rude to just insert yourself into a conversation that's going on, I will accept that, because at least now I know who the fuck you are. But he didn't do that. He just came up to the table, sat down, didn't introduce himself, and started inserting himself into conversation. And it was mad fucking weird. And so I was like, well, since he's not introducing himself, I guess he doesn't really want to be a part of this conversation. So in the beginning, I kept just talking to Janet as if he wasn't even there, because I was like, this is mad fucking weird. And before anyone starts speculating, oh, maybe there wasn't anywhere else to sit, no, there were plenty other empty tables all around us for him to sit. And he was looking directly at Janet the whole time. It wasn't like he sat down and turned around, was facing the opposite direction, was observing something else. Or it wasn't like he maybe had earbuds in, he was playing with his phone, and he was not really focused on our conversation, doing his own thing. That would have been fine. No, he was invested in this conversation. And I just didn't like it. I looked at Janet, and this bitch, just suddenly her face lit up, and she just had a shit-eating grin on her face. And the whole time that this went on. Couple days go by. I see her during the day, during work, and we talk, and she was like, that was the guy that makes me uncomfortable, yada, yada, yada. So during this time when he was sitting down with us, I didn't know that this was the man at all, because she didn't make it clear to me. She didn't even message me on the download, be like, that's the guy, so then I could do something about it. So I just thought this was a weird fucking guy. I suspected this might have been the dude, but I wasn't sure, because she never confirmed it until a couple days later when we were talking at work. And she was like, yeah, that's the guy who makes me uncomfortable. I was like, oh, bet. Fucking bet. Okay, now I know who it is. Now I know precisely who it is. Bet. And then she went on to tell me about how she was kind of a little bit worried about the fact that he was in the transitional dorms with us, and how he was so close to where we were, because that's how she ended up meeting as well. Like, she didn't just meet him down at the Fox Bar, but she also ended up meeting him because it turns out he was in one of the rooms in the transitional dorms that we were staying in. So naturally, they just linked up that way. And she told me, she was kind of worried about him knowing where she was staying because of how he made her feel uncomfortable. And I was like, oh, fuck no. I'm not going to let something happen to you. A lot of things happen in the military that get swept under the rug, that don't make it to public media or are taken care of internally and justly at that, but still don't actually make it out to the media, which I think is a huge fucking travesty. And one of those things is like things concerning assault and, rape and assault, especially. That stuff doesn't really make it out to the mainline news. So the fact that she was saying she's worried, that the fact that he knows where she's staying, and I try to like calm her down a little bit and be like, it's okay, you're only going to be here for like a few more weeks, you know, it's all right, just lock your door, you know, if you need anything, call me, let me know, message me, let there be a record so that God forbid something happens to you, we have a record, we could take this motherfucker to court, and you know, justice will be swift, hopefully. And so she's like, okay, all right, got it. Another few days later, me and her once again go to the bar again because she wants to go to the bar and get her drinks, but she doesn't want to go because she doesn't want to run into this guy that makes her uncomfortable. So I was like, okay, how about this? How about if we sit inside the Fox bar instead of outside, so that the likelihood of him like seeing us and finding us is a bit lower. And I was like, not only that, but there's more people around so that we could also feel safer too. Because at this point, I was also feeling uncomfortable and I was kind of feeling unsafe. Like, I didn't, like, as much as I wanted to have like my big girl panties on to handle this, I was also scared because of how serious she was saying she was worried and scared of this guy and how this guy made her uncomfortable. So I was like, okay, if we go to the bar to have drinks, we're going to drink them inside the bar where there's plenty of witnesses, there's plenty of people around, because I, like, it was starting to affect me mentally a little bit, where I was like, I can't handle this on my own, like, I need backup, and what better place than somewhere where it's more public, well lit, like inside the Fox bar. So that's what we did. We got our drinks, sat down in the Fox bar. I remember I was drinking Chardonnay. That's when I really got into Chardonnay and I really got into my wines, was during the second deployment. And we were once again shooting the shit like we normally do, talking about you know, our lives, our families, blah 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 blah, things that we like, things we don't like, sharing music like we normally do. And this guy came in and it was almost as if he knew exactly where we were. And so this is why I say Janet is a shady bitch, because it was weird. It was almost as if he knew exactly where we were, that he found us and came and sat down with us again. Once again, Janet had this weird shit-eating grin, and he joined in the conversation, and he was actively trying to impress me, I noticed. And this time, I didn't want it to be weird again, because I was just like, okay, whatever. He's not going to go. At least we're in a public space so we could feel safer. I was like, I'll just join it, invite him in on the conversation maybe a little bit. But he still didn't introduce himself. I still don't know who he is. He still popped in the conversation as if he knew us our whole life. And I noticed he was really trying to impress us. So he asked me, oh, what are you drinking? I was like, oh, I'm drinking a Chardonnay. And he was like, oh. And then he started talking about wines. And he started talking about rosés. Like, you could tell he was really trying to impress me for some reason. I don't know why. And I was like, okay, weird. And I was also like getting really pissed off too, because I was just like, I don't know why this guy is here. Like, she needs to put her big girl panties on and be like, hey, you're making us uncomfortable. You know, express what she expressed to me. Even if she expressed it to like 1%, that would have been better than me sitting here getting pissed off and not knowing what is going on. And so I was like, okay. I messaged her on Facebook, because we were Facebook friends at the time, and I was connected to Wi-Fi. I was like, hey, let's go to the bathroom real quick. Because, you know, once again, girl code, if one girl goes to the bathroom, we all gotta go to the bathroom. I was like, maybe if we go to the bathroom, he'll leave, and then we could come back and have our last drink and just have peace again. And she messaged me back, okay, let's do it. And so I was like, oh, I gotta use the bathroom. Do you gotta go, girl? And Janet was like, yes, I gotta go. And so we went out to the bathroom. Now, at this base, all the bathrooms are not located in the normal, like, centralized buildings like they would be here in America. So the bathroom was actually a good 50 to 75 feet away, and it in its own separate building. And that's just kind of how the culture is out there, where it's like you don't have your bathrooms. I think the idea behind it is you don't shit where you eat. And so the bathrooms are never connected to any of the buildings. They have their own separate buildings entirely. And so it's a good 50, 75 feet away. And so we walked out to the bathroom. As soon as the door closed, I looked at her and I was like, what the fuck? this is when she started laughing hysterically. You see what I mean about her having communication issues? Because at this point, I'm sitting here thinking, maybe she's not taking this as seriously. Maybe she wasn't as serious as she made it out to be, that this guy was making her uncomfortable. Maybe she really likes the attention. But I asked her again, what the fuck? And she just continued laughing. And then she started shaking her head while she was laughing. And then started being like, I don't know. I don't know. Laughing. And I'm just like, what the fuck? This isn't funny. This is kind of scary. And so I was like, okay, whatever. Use the bathroom. Wash my hands. Get myself together. And then we went back outside. Outside of the bathroom, this guy was waiting for us to come back out. He followed us to the bathroom that was 50 to 75 feet away in its own separate building, waiting for us to come out of the woman's bathroom, and then proceeded to walk with us back to the bar. I am not shitting you. So, honestly, here's what I think what happened. At the time, I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I already had 2 drinks of really strong Chardonnay. I was having my 3rd one. I was not in the right mind to fully process what was happening. So in the moment, I was pissed off. I was annoyed. I was like over it. I was done. And I ended up ending the conversation where he says something along the lines of, "Are you okay?" to me. And I was like, no, I'm not okay, because you inserted yourself into this conversation. I don't even know who you are. You're making us uncomfortable, and I'm done. And I took the last swig of my Charmaine. No, not Charmaine. I took the last swig of my Chardonnay, and I walked out, and I left both of them there in the Fox Bar, because it just made no sense to me. But now, having a sober mind, like, reflecting back on it, I'm kind of wondering if maybe she was involved, like, sexually involved with him in some way, shape, or form. And maybe they were trying to go for, like, some threesome type of action. Because why was he trying so hard to impress me? As if I was, like, Janet's older sister. And it was like, oh, you know, I want to date your sister type of vibe to it. Why is he trying to impress me? I didn't understand it, you know? And he was going into detail about the wine when he was trying to impress me. And I was just like, why? So I'm thinking maybe they already had something going on, and maybe she was lying and not being completely honest, not being completely truthful, and maybe they were trying to set up some threesome thing, but no one was willing to say the fucking words. That is my story, my 2 crazy tea time stories from my second deployment, about my deployment bestie Janet having poor communication skills, making me feel scared and unsafe because of the pretense that she set up. And then also about my cunt of a roommate, Haley, and all the dirty deeds that she was doing. Like, it's crazy. It's such a crazy situation. I still can't believe I went through that. And also some updates on where, I don't know where they are now, but some updates since these incidents happened. Janet ended up divorcing her husband, at the time, after all these incidents. But that was something that me and her kind of discussed one-on-one during our moments when we were shooting the shit together, and she would ask me for advice. So during that deployment, she did ask me what she should do, because she claimed that her husband that was back home stateside was very abusive, very controlling, and she didn't know what to do. At the time, the only advice I gave her, I told her, you have a kid with this man, and I can't relate to that because I don't have a kid. I'm team no kids. And so I can't really relate to you, so I can't give you really advice on that. The only advice I did give her, however, was, when making this decision to get a divorce or not to get a divorce, don't think about what I think or anyone else thinks. Think about your daughter. Think about what she is going to see growing up and how that is going to affect her ability to perceive the world and how she thinks things in the world work. And if that is something you want for her by staying with him, or leaving him. That is how you decide if you are going to get a divorce or not, is what you want your daughter to see and what lessons you want your daughter to learn going forward of how to be treated as a woman, as a lady, as a growing woman. And that's just what I told her. I was like, I can't tell you if you should get a divorce or not, but just if with this decision, think about your daughter and the lessons that you are inadvertently teaching her, because kids see everything. And with that advice, she ended up deciding she was going to get a divorce. And good for her. You know, it got finalized a long, long, long time ago. But I do wonder if some of the controlling stuff that she was saying about her now ex-husband, maybe there was some truth to it. Maybe she was being involved with, you know, Chad. So much so that Chad's wife reached out to her and no one else in the unit about hanging out with him and not being able to talk to her husband because Janet was hanging out with him. I don't know. But, and then also a couple months after I got home from this deployment, my chief, he ended up meeting up with me at a commander's call one day. He wanted to get in touch with me because he told me, hey, your old roommate from the desert, Haley, suddenly got orders to come to this base. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, we're all going to meet her at the airport. I just want to let you know since she was your roommate so we could all welcome her to Offutt. And I simply shook my head and I said, no, thank you. And he was like, oh, but why? And I was like, I don't want to get into it because I don't want my perception of her, like your perception of her, excuse me, to change because of my experience. I was like, I don't want to get into it because I don't want drama, especially because she's now coming to this base and she's going to be a potential future coworker because we all work in the same field, essentially, just different job titles. I don't want the drama, so I'm not going to get into it, but you guys have fun at the airport. I will not be there. And the chief understood. You know, the chief was like, okay, I understand. We just want to let you know, but we'll keep it at that. And I was like, yep, we will. So not only was this woman, Haley, sleeping with this man, she got orders to this man's base. Like within I would say within 2 months, 3 months after her leaving the desert, she was able to get orders to that base, which is crazy to me because I'm like, a lot of times it's hard to get orders to different bases, and the fact that she was able to just get one so easily and that quickly is just like crazy, and it tells me a lot that they had to have been together. So I'm just like, the audacity. I can't imagine what Chad's wife must have felt or has gone through. I don't even know if Chad's wife knew about this detail about her getting orders to the base. I don't even know if Chad even got that divorce or if he just kept cheating on his wife. I have no idea. Those are my tea time stories from my deployment. Oh Lord, fun times. Fun times. I think I might have some more stories, but I'll have to really think hard because it's been so many years since I've been in the military, let alone since I've been on those deployments, that it's a lot. Those memories are very like far away to me, so it's hard for me to remember some of the juicy like gossip that happened when I was deployed. That in general, like not only just in the military but even now, I'm the kind of person where I mind my own business. I don't get involved with people's drama. If people tell me drama, I'll listen to it, but I will not spit it back out to anyone, unless it's one of those situations where it's like, hey, we need an answer on this, otherwise your ass is on the line. Then I'm gonna spit what I know. But otherwise, I like listening to the gossip. I love listening to the drama, but I don't repeat it. I don't really do anything with it until now with this podcast. Now I'm doing something with it, but I mean, it is what it is. Thank you guys so much for listening. I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to listen to our tea time stories. We'll have more of these in the future, and they'll have many different themes, and they're all going to be based, of course, off of our actual experiences that we kind of went through and we witnessed and saw. If not, if you have a tea time story that you want shared on the air, go ahead and send us an email, send us a message with this story. If you want to remain anonymous, we 100% could do that. And you could go ahead and change all the names of the story, and we might just share it on the air. You're going to want to email that to askdbcpod@gmail.com. Remember to put Ask LJ in the subject line. That way it just makes it a lot easier for us to sift through the emails that we get, and we can find it, and if we like it, we'll read it on the air for the next Tea Time episode. Until then, I hope you guys stay fabulous, and remember, don't burn your cookies.